interest rates are, what building costs are, and that type of thing. And frankly, this housing study is going to change that. It happens in the private sector, and it happens in the daily course of doing business. And so when we have more jobs, which certainly is a key element in this, and jobs with higher wages, then people are able to afford housing and or better housing, and that's what makes the difference. And I say these things only to caution you that um, I want to encourage housing. Our company has been in business for 43 years. We've built hundreds of homes. You know, we used to build 30 or 40 homes a year back in the late 70s and early 80s, not only in Scottsbluff, Gearing, Morrill County. And then we've been in the rental business since 1981. And we love housing. We love everything that goes with it, and remodeling and putting things together. I was thinking just the other day about the old CBDG grants that Cindy, in fact, administered for a long time, where we, were able to fix up lots of houses around town. Some Farmers Home Administration loans from way back in the early 80s that, a lot of Gearing areas in the Guile area and the Meadows, some in Indian Hills, were built under those programs. My point simply here is that I want to encourage housing, but I want us to be careful that from a government standpoint, that we try and, we can't change the basic premise of those things I mentioned earlier, interest rates, wages, and those kinds of things. Certainly we can possibly be helpful to people to be able to afford something, and I know that through the LB 840 we recently did a couple things that could make things a little better. But I just want to be sure that we don't think government can be the fix-all for this, because they can't. And I don't believe that we're in a crisis situation for housing. I had my youngest son recently moved back from going to college, and within 2.5 weeks he found a home in Gearing and bought it, and it was in the 100,000 range, but he found it quickly. But if one of the concerns is when people say there's not enough affordable housing. Well, that's subjective. And what is affordable housing? And typically it means that someone wants more than what they can afford. That's a simple story. And I just don't want this study to get us totally out of touch with reality. And that's what I'm hoping for. I hope that one of the biggest things that if we start to try and help other places, people, organizations further the housing issue, I just want to be sure that we don't create an unfair playing field for businesses or individuals, that somebody starts to get an unfair advantage because of some kind of government help. And I've been in touch with TCD and West Nebraska Housing Opportunities saying, hey, and I don't want you to be my competition either. And so not only them, but whatever government organization, I don't want them to be in competition with the private sector. Let the private sector run the course. You can help assist those things in some ways, but we're not going to change. We're not going to build 700 houses in the next 3 years. That just isn't going to happen, I don't think, unless some significant things come in that changes the economic dynamic of things. And when it does, it can be built that quickly, and I hope it is. I hope we find things that would produce that. But I just caution you that I'm not a major proponent of the housing study, just because it seems to say that we need a whole lot more than what we actually do. Right now, the rental the rental business has had some very good vacancy rates for the owners for the last 6 or 7 years. But that's not true today. In the last 6 months, that has changed dramatically. And the vacancy rates have been 3% or so for 6 or 7 years. But now they're closer to 10. And so that's all different. And so it doesn't show, in my opinion, and we can check that out with local people, but those vacancy rates have definitely gone considerably higher. So I just want to throw that out there, make it known that I'm not quite as gung-ho on what we need for housing, and that it's still the thing of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, and the economic things have to change for the housing process to change. And anything, I guess, that you can do to help those things on a reasonable basis, fine. But to think that that we need this with the current economic conditions, I don't think that we do, and that's my concern, okay? So I just want you to know that. I'll be sure and put my information here. Any questions for me?
No, from my standpoint, I think we're setting ourselves up to be in line to be able to receive both state and federal monies that have been, just in the last year by legislation, has been able to come about. So that, the study, the LB 840, that to try and line those up. I've never personally been a proponent of giving money or trying to make the houses less. Where I hear in talking with the private sector is, things that they're having to carry, like putting in new streets or new curb, new gutter, and then they have to carry that or loan that out until they get the house sold. If there is a way we could partner with that, and that would make, I hear exactly what you're saying, making the playing field even, as long as the general contractor, i.e. you or anybody else, qualified for those funds. Those may be ways that we could partner to help do that without, trying to get into, okay, we're buying the land, we're doing this. That may be stepping over those bounds that you're bringing forward.
Well, and I'll let you guys figure out all the details, but, back in the old days, back in the late 70s, early 80s, the cities would finance all of the infrastructure. And then they would loan the money, basically, they would, to the developer, and then those infrastructure costs had to be paid off as the lots were sold. And the city charged interest on that, but they were paid off as they were sold. And that seemed to work good until the economy went south on us in the early 80s. And then all of a sudden, many of those lots got foreclosed on, and then they were sold for pennies on the dollar, and it was the cities that were left holding the bag. And, we own a couple lots still up in Indian Hills and some things like that, and there were many in Gearing that were the same thing. So I know there's risk and there's things that have to be considered, but I appreciate your attention and just wanted to throw those things out at you.
So as we continue to work through this, would you be willing to sit down with us or be
Sure.
part of that group?
Yeah, I'd love to. Okay?
See,
All
one
right.
of my concerns with the study is I see it as more of a, if you build it, they will come mentality. And that's not what it was intended to be, but that looks like what it is in the plan. That's my concern with this plan.
And that's part of my concern, because that's what it
I have to go back
reflects.
to what you said. You got 3 components. All those components have to come up kind of at the same time. You can't really do one or go gangbusters with one or the other one.
I think that study also identified that there is some housing that is in pretty rough shape.
Yep.
Whether we can address that through CDBG grants, that'll be 518. But I think we as a council need to have a discussion about what our involvement is going to be. If we say we're just going to put in LB 40 money, TIP funding is available, I think we need to determine at what level we're going to get involved in. And I think, Star sitting on WED, and I know they've been involved in that. So she can have some direction to say, this is all, the city is prepared to do this, but that's as far as, or to give her some guidance.
Well, 518 is going to require some matching
And I realized that this study needed to be done to help substantiate some of the things that you're gonna want to do in the future, so, and I understand that.
The feds would come back at some point and say, your data's too old, even though it may say the same thing, but.
Okay,
Hey,
thank you
Mark.
so much.
Mark, sorry, quick question for you. On average, in the last 5 years, how many homes are you building on average?
Ours, very few. You know, we just finished one this week for my brother, actually, a mile east of town. But our focus, you know, once we went through the eighties when the economy tanked, and back in the days when I said, oh, we'll always have a house in speculation and we'll always have one for sale, well, that changed my mind. And so it was the late eighties when our focus switched from new construction to more remodeling, and that's what we do primarily now, so. Thank you.
Good set, thanks, Mark. Anybody else? So my recommendation is that we send this back so the planning commission can chime in on it. And then, I'd like to see us bring it back after the first of the year and do just what you said, Raymond. We need to give STAR some guidance and how we wanna, I think we wanna position ourselves so that when state money or federal money is available, just like with the sirens, that we're in a position to do that. Agree?
One of the things, though, that I did notice in here, and one of the things that we're seeing a lot of demand on, and that's elderly housing. Elderly people being able to stay in place, stay at their own home, and that's gonna need to be addressed, whether, certainly at the private sector level, but, you know, possibly from others as well, so,
Which would include no stairs,
yeah, no steps,
bigger
and
doors.
laundry on the main floor, and all of those things, so.
Consensus on that direction?
Seems logical.
Makes sense to me.
I think it makes a lot more sense than just adopting it into the plan.
Well, this is all a process, not that we're trying, it's brought to the table for discussion so that we can move forward in a good way. So. All right, does that give you enough guidance? Okay, public information. The purpose of this agenda item is to allow for public comment on agendas of potential discussion at a future council meeting. Comments brought to the council for information only. The council will not take any action on the item except to refer it to council to address or place on a future council agenda. This comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anybody under public comment?
I just received a phone call yesterday soliciting I guess a survey of sorts, and they brought up a lot of, would I be in favor of blank sales tax for roads, for overpasses on Fifth Avenue, sewers, job creation. Would I pay taxes to have the YMCA build an Olympic-sized pool in my town? Would I have it for an Olympic-sized pool somewhere else? Would I want the city to build the pool with this tax dollars? And then very scattered public official evaluations, including you on yours. And I was wondering how the phone number I got called on was reached, because it's a 402 number. It's not a listed phone number in the phone book. And I believe our water bill is actually under my wife's phone number. So I didn't know if that was CRA or if that was sponsored by the city or how that was funded, but it was, caught me a little off guard when they were asking about everything, if it was something that was sponsored by the city to go around. I hope I didn't tip a hat of anything that's coming on the upcoming elections, but maybe I should have come to you on the side to let you know that you were the only one that was targeted for approval rating.
You gotta be targeted, I guess.
So,
They don't know where the rest of us are.
yeah, it seemed to know exactly where I was from and things like that. So it was just, I guess I'd just kind of bringing it up for discussion if that is something that you guys are looking at putting on a ballot coming. I just thought it was a little early for looking at ballots and things like that, or if it was a prank call or whatnot. But
LB 357 would come up in November.
would Would that be the tax that they're talking about? And whether it would be for all of those things?
Is that something that we're doing, is the survey thing?
The
No,
survey's
we're
not
not.
from the city, no.
Okay.
I just figured it would
I
happen
hadn't heard
for
anything
all of
about
you
it,
guys.
so,
Not doing that survey. Yeah.
Just public comment.
thanks.
Any other? Okay, council reports. The 911 task force met, they unanimously approved to the county to go ahead with the Zerker contract. They made recommendation to the county for the first payment of $280,000. The package for the CAD system and the records management system came out about $250,000 less than expected. That was able, with that, then we were able to decrease the cost to Scottsbluff by 10%, which was just a little under $10,000 into this budget year. We foresee that going forward for the next 2 to 3 years. The maintenance contracts also came back a little bit less than expected, and they're going to take over some of the hardware as part of the maintenance contract. So very positive, unanimous back to the county, and so that's in progress. No senior center this month.
Were we looking at some procedure for people to be able to add things to the agenda, or is that something we were gonna not look at? We had talked about it at the meeting over in Gearing.
You wanted a formal policy?
Right, I didn't know if we were gonna look at something like that in the future, how to add things to the agenda. I mean, one of the things I'd like to do is start going through ordinances that are outdated.
Okay.
You know, not 15 at once, but occasionally pull some of the outdated ones up and get rid of them, or fix them, or whatever else.
Okay.
I didn't know what the best way to do that was, wait for the new guidelines, or what the way to do it was, so.
Well, we can talk after the meeting
Okay.
on what you have in mind and
Okay.
start bringing those forward if that's the will of council.
Star and I attended the Balloon Federation of America presentation at the Civic Center last week. It was very exciting. The whole Western Nebraska Balloon Committee is trying to attract this Balloon Federation of America here. It's roughly 50 balloons. 50 balloons potentially could come in to do a competition with roughly over 100 targets that they have to go and meet across basically Scottsbluff, Gearing, Mitchell, Morrill Valley area. So it was pretty neat to hear their discussion. They're in Louisiana. This is their last year in Louisiana, and so this area and two other, one in Iowa and one in Wyoming, are all up for competition, and they were very complimentary of our area and how welcoming we were, and so we're excited. We should have some news in the next couple weeks, but it would be a 3-year commitment, and it would be in the summertime. And each team, if there's 50 teams, they could bring in roughly 3 to 5 people per team. So there could be a lot of people, then a lot of good showing with them.
Here, Wyoming with the wind could be pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, and just.
Go down, down, down!
Yeah. So it was really neat, and the Tourism Commission did a really nice job, and the executive director of the balloon competition, or I guess the executive director of our balloon festival that we have here is top notch. I think she's very good, so we're excited about that.
The PAD meeting's next Thursday at the Chamber Room. Jordan Colwell ran in the Jingle Jog.
So did Ray.
I think I saw that.
Looks like it was a pretty good turnout.
Good deal.
Yeah.
All right, student council, anything?
I haven't heard anything back.
Jump up here.
Erin Willits, the SHS Student Senate. Student Senate right now, we are a part of the inaugural Student Advisory Committee which meets with Mr. Hawley and the School Resource Officer, and we discuss issues that are pertinent to the SHS student body. DECA, we just recently had our district conference. We hosted Scottsbluff, Gearing, Hastings, Central City, Gillette, and Laramie students. Students were required to take a written test and then participate in a judged event. These scores were then added, and the overall winners were determined from those scores. Scottsbluff DECA had 20 students placed in the top 3, and we had 5 overall winners. The art club successfully painted 67 people as zombies while operating the zombie salon. The visual arts teacher, Jeff Ferrari, spent a month training the art club students how to quickly paint faces in a safe, hygienic manner using professional quality paint. Attendees had a fantastic time turning into zombies and attending the event of the day. The Theater and Art Center were very pleased with the amount for the turnout first-time event and plan to repeat it next year. $625 was raised to reestablish the art club at SHS. The Educator Risings took 7 students to attend the Showcase of Teaching in Omaha. On November 8th, students attended breakouts presented by education experts, participated in networking opportunities with teacher educators, institutions from across our state, and attended leadership sessions. Educator Rising is partnering with our 3E initiative to help with activities and other events in our community. The cheerleaders recently just sponsored the Powder Puff game, which was in support of the local food bank the local food pantry and cat packs. Something new that they added this year was during halftime they did a flag football scrimmage for the teachers and other staff members. One Axe just participated at the North Platte Invitational on Saturday. There were 11 performances, and our show, The Actor's Nightmare, placed 3rd. 3 of our actors won Outstanding Actor Awards: Dakota Emfield, Robert Simmons, and Berlin Quint. HOSA just attended the Experience in Omaha. Students visited Midlands Hospitals and Lakeside Hospitals for a hands-on workshop at both hospitals. 42 students received hands-on experience in a wide variety of medical knowledge, such as surgery, infection control, emergency room, ambulance response care, cardiac care, respiratory care, behavioral health, and many others. And now HOSA is currently working on preparing for the state competition in March. Yes. Thank you.
All right, any other items? Seeing no other items, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second, call the roll.
McCarthy?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Caldwell?
Yes.
Meininger?
Yes.
Shaver?
Everything I've said, she didn't say, and everything I didn't say.
Sure.
Hey, Randy, can I get you send
You want me to stand or sit? Well, I can stand.
There's 2 certificates.
I can stand up if you want.